Welcome to Coming Home to Self, a home yoga practice series. My name is Jennifer and I'm coming to you from my home in Brooklyn, New York. This is our second video, a second installment, focusing on the water element and how to start to bring some flow and fluidity into the kind of second half of our second part of our yoga sequence. So what we just came from was the earth element, which you can check out in the previous video, where we were really grounding the body and setting up our physical space. The water element, which comes next, really focuses more on the kind of hips and the sacral region, the low belly, and allowing a sense of fluidity in the whole body. And a couple of different ways that we can think about how to access that water element is by moving the hips, but also by articulating the joints. The synovial fluid around the joints is one of the literal water elements in the body, but also thinking about the spine. The spine, which has its base in the hips, in the pelvis, and articulates all the way up, but of course the beautiful fluid curves of the spine and how all of those vertebrae are cushioned by the water of our discs. So allowing there to be a fluidity in the spine such that we can receive the information that we need for our practice, but also to feel kind of safe and secure in our bodies, to normalize the nervous system so that we're not in a sense of fight or flight throughout our practice. So those are the main elements of how we'll work with water. So coming into a seated position first, we're sitting in Sukhasana, easy, comfortable pose. There are a couple of ways that we can just start to flow a little bit more. So in a very simple way, you can do some cats and cows here in a seated position, rocking along the hips. And here I'm really allowing my arms to help me as I lift and lengthen the spine, letting the chest come forward and then rounding back. So all the way from the base of the tailbone through the crown of the head. And there's a real wave-like motion to the spine in the same way that we can think about the wave of the breath. As we start to flow, we might also more actively think about our ujjayi breath, ocean sounding breath. So inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. A little bit of an exaggeration so that you guys can hear, but the sound should be pretty gentle. And from there you can start to kind of roll around on the hips, letting the spine undulate in all directions and moving out and around like that. Opposite way. And then you can come to the center and taking a simple shoulder opener as well. You can use your strap and allow the strap to come into your arms above your head. Taking the strap wide apart is a good way to start, just to gauge how open your shoulders are in any given day, and then allowing the hands to come back, and then the arms to come forward. So this simple shoulder flossing can help us to open the chest, open this really very commonly tight area of the body, getting into the fluid, the synovial fluid of the shoulders, and always moving on the breath. I also like to incorporate some side bends, which the strap can be nice to do with, allowing the sides of the body to open so that breath has more space to flow through. So a way to think about opening the body in these opening postures is like making more space for your breath to flow. Twisting can also be kind of fun here, just wringing out the abdomen. In the way that water will go around rocks or kind of obstructions in nature. You can think about how to clear those obstructions so that the water of our breath can flow more freely. And then once we're done with that bit, we can also do some work on hands and knees. So coming into a tabletop position, you can set up something soft and cushy underneath your knees if that's a good thing for your body. Coming into some cats and cows here can be really nice. Allowing the tops of the feet to press into your cat pose, and then allowing the chest to spread into your cow. Again, feeling the undulating qualities of the spine. So it's not just about kind of throwing your body forward and back. Really articulating from the base to the crown of the head. Again, incorporating some shoulders. You can do some thread the needles. And what I like to do in these beginning postures is to help to find a sense of rhythm, which is another way to incorporate the water element. So establishing some dynamic movement first before we hold the postures can help us come into a breath ratio that we can sustain then in the hold. We come to the other side with that, so letting that breath ratio come with these opening little half twists. Before we come all the way down into the full twist. And again, here's where we can find space in the body for that breath to flow. And then starting to incorporate some little baby vinyasas, as I like to call them. So we can start in a downward facing dog, coming into it slowly, and I like to kind of pad and pedal my dog by taking the opposite hand and foot away from the floor, just to feel into the earth. So just because we've moved on to water doesn't mean we forget about earth. So always coming back to the sense of the ground underneath us. You can take your feet nice and wide apart. You can keep them a little bit narrower, whatever your body is feeling, letting there be a softness in the joints to begin. And I like to do this kind of rippling thing that helps us to kind of continue that wave-like motion of the breath. So inhaling, ripple through your spine, come forward to a plank pose. Then you can exhale, lower your knees, sit back to a child's pose. Inhale, lift the hips, tuck the toes. Exhale, shift the weight back, downward facing dog. Again, rippling forward to plank, letting the collarbone spread. Then lower the knees and sit back. We'll just do one more like that, just so that you can see the full sequence. You can do kind of 3 to 5 of those, if that feels right to you. And then adding on a little bit more, before we get into full sun salutations, we can do a kind of baby version. I like to incorporate some lunges to really get into the hips a little bit more. So you can step one foot forward, your right foot forward maybe to begin. Coming into an Anjaneyasana with the chest, letting the thumbs hook so that you can wrap the outer upper arms. And notice how I'm really letting my spine, letting my hips come forward a little bit. Even my knee is a little bit forward on my front ankle, and that's okay for this. We're just stretching the front of the psoas here, allowing the hips to be heavy. Then we might come a little bit more upright to feel a little bit of that engagement in the thigh. So that front heel is dragging towards the back knee, the front hamstring is turned on, and the psoas is now a little bit more engaged. You can take side bends here. You could take twists here. From that firm foundation, from the earth element in the legs. Coming down, you can stretch the front leg any amount. You could always use blocks underneath your hands here. And then lastly, to finish off, a nice little hamstring opener. And then coming back down, you can come back to a plank pose and then maybe just start to incorporate some back bends. So a baby cobra would be really good here, or a shalabhasana variation. I like forehead touching hands. And then we come back to our downward facing dog. And to stay nice and balanced, we'll do the second side together. So left foot comes forward, back knee lowers, hooking the opposite thumb. So really being mindful of balancing the two sides. Come on up, side bend, lift up, twisting, lift up, firming the legs in, hands come down, stretch the front leg, and then taking that twist. This being a quadricep stretch, of course, not a hamstring stretch, which I said on the other side mistakenly. And then stepping back, and you might step back to downward facing dog.
And then the last bit, that's a really nice way to come into the water element at the beginning-ish of the practice, is from a standing position, doing some joint work. You can do joint work, of course, in a seated or kneeling position. Joint work with tabletop, kind of rolling the shoulders, rolling the wrists. But I really love this sequence, dasha, chalana. I won't show you the whole thing. There's a separate video that you can watch on it, but it just goes through all of the joints. So the ankles, the shoulders, the head, the wrists, and the torso and the spine in all sorts of ways to really open up the joints. And when we're doing that, again, we're not only getting into the space of the joint, but also working the water element because of that synovial fluid that's protecting our bones. So allowing a bit of that before we start to really flow and build heat can just prevent any of that extra heat from burning up, from causing any inflammation or pain or discomfort in the body. So really allowing a sense of fluidity and suppleness can support you long term for the rest of your practice and the rest of your life. So that's the water element. Thank you for watching, and namaste.